Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So presumably it's a advanced crowd tonight here. Advanced Buddhists, not retreating but advancing. Last week I said a little bit about the purpose of the Buddha's teachings to guide us to the freedom from suffering, but I just explained it in kind of very simple terms. But of course it is quite a, complex or very involved process. We could free ourselves from suffering with a couple of aspirin. But of course the Buddha means a lot more than that. In fact, it's probably not even, it's a little bit, of a simplistic, just to say the Buddha is teaching us to be free from suffering, because he included in that, it's the translation of the Pali word dukkha, and it's been various different translations of it. And some of the translators, of course, they want to have one English word for one Pali word, but many times there's different connotations. Like the word dukkha has many different connotations to it. Probably the most common one has to do with feeling tones. Just as we say, we're suffering, it's our feeling. So it's one of the three feelings, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. And in the Thai language, they would actually qualify it as dukkha vedana. But when it's referred to as dukkha, particularly in the context of the Four Noble Truths, it has much wider connotations. It's not just suffering or pain, but probably more appropriately, it'd be useful to translate it, at least in the, in one extreme, like what we have the feeling tones as a, suffering or pain. On the other side, what the Buddha said, one of his quotations about the ultimate reality was that all conditions, sappe sankhara, are dukkha. All conditioned things, all compounded, created things are dukkha. But if you use that same word, dukkha, translated as suffering, well, it sounds like pessimism, doesn't it? Everything is suffering. Ooh, that doesn't sound very cheerful, is it? And if that was, what people understood, Buddhism wouldn't have caught on, if Buddha was a pessimist. Everything is miserable. But what he was saying in that context was sappe sankhara dukkhang. All compounded, conditioned, constructed things are dukkha. It means that they're imperfect, incomplete. Anything which is compounded, anything which is constructed is going to deconstruct eventually. So, and if we don't understand that, then we're going to suffer. As human beings, we're going to suffer. We don't understand that the conditioned world is imperfect. Like the average person doesn't understand that. They look for perfection in the world. The world never lives up to their expectations, right? They look for perfection in most things. You want the perfect government, forget it. You want the perfect partner, good luck. Perfect job, well, good luck again. But we keep looking, don't we? We keep looking for perfection and completeness. But if we understand that basic teaching of the Buddha, everything which is put together, constructed, conditioned, is imperfect, then what's the problem? Well, so the government's not perfect, our partners aren't perfect, our job isn't perfect, so that confirms the Buddha's teaching. Rather than be disappointed, you even get a kind of a payoff. Aha, right. Just as the Buddha said, it's imperfect. Yeah, right. Then we can learn to adapt to it, adjust to that reality. But if we still live with this, this kind of fantasy idea, it should be perfect, we'll be disappointed all the time. So something in between, you say maybe between imperfection and suffering, maybe you should say things are unsatisfactory. It's a bit of a long word, unsatisfactoriness, but I think it kind of puts together the abstract principle of imperfection plus the human element of suffering. It's unsatisfactory. It's not going to satisfy us. And one of the specific things, and Buddha explained what this was, what is unsatisfactory. I mean, I mentioned the last time about, he mentioned, of course, old age, sickness, the birth, old age, sickness, and death is unsatisfactory. And then there's, not getting what you want, being associated with the unpleasant, being dissociated from the pleasant. Yeah. But the summary, the shortened version was that the 5 groups of grasping, the khandhas, are also unsatisfactory. Anybody heard of that? 5 groups of grasping, the 5 khandhas. It's a very, very, very important theme to contemplate. It's one of the themes to contemplate in the development of mindfulness. It's not so well known, maybe in the West. Some people aren't so astute about the nature of their own experience of body-mind. So they just say it's body-mind or something, or maybe they speculate a little bit about certain aspects of their body-mind. When you get older, your memory starts to go. So, that part of my mind is unsatisfactory. But the Buddha, in the Buddha's time, those 5 factors, those 5 aspects of you can say they are the aspects of a human being, how we relate to reality. They aren't actually the elements of our so-called being, but they're how we actually can relate to or function in reality. We need these 5 particular aspects of body-mind to be able to function in the world, how we experience the world through the body. Through feeling, that's another one. Through what's called sanya, another little bit of a difficult word because it's been translated as perception, but its main aspect is memory. In order to perceive something, in order to actually to recognize it, to give it a label, you have to have some association in your mind. Some learning. You have to have some learning maybe behind it. Like usually I have that gong there sitting next to me, so I tell people, what is that, you think? If you haven't seen it before, if you haven't been to a Buddhist monastery, you look at that thing and you think, what is it? It's a spittoon. It's got your cocktail in it or something. It's a cocktail salad bowl or something, When we travel, we go through the customs people, and they see our bowl, a big metal bowl. What is that? It's a salad bowl.
It's a drum.
It's a drum, is it? A metal drum? People are they're mostly very confused. What is it? Well, it's something we collect our food in. You eat a lot of food. That big bowl like that. Fortunately, they don't make bombs like that anymore. But if we were the turn of the century, if we had that to think it's a bomb, And then there is, besides, in the mental part, feeling, perceptions, mental activities or processes, and then consciousness. And we have these as part of our way of relating to reality, but how many people actually are able to recognize them or distinguish them? When the Buddha was talking about the path of freedom from suffering, freedom from unsatisfactoriness, you have to know what is unsatisfactoriness first. What's called the Four Noble Truths formula. You have to know what it is. You have to know the cause, the cessation, and the path. So if we don't know that these aspects of our humanity are fundamentally unsatisfactory, don't know what they are, how are we going to find out what their causes are? What's the cause of it? How are we going to be able to arrive at cessation then, if we aren't able to release the cause? For example, some people, they have, the fourth one, or the mental one, the fourth one of these five groups is sankharas, which I translate as mental processes. So if you don't understand that, it's basically thinking, if you like, in a simple sense. All your thoughts, and in Thai they say, is there any Thais here? There isn't any, is there? Oh, yeah. Kit nuk prung deng. Kit nuk prung deng. Prung deng. Oh, you don't speak Thai?
That's right.
Prung deng. So basically they say, well, you're thinking, imagining, thinking, imagining, and conceptualizing, or conceptual proliferation. So that's probably the most expressive aspect of sankharas. A more subtle aspect, which is very fundamental actually, is the intentions or volition. But it's very hard to notice. I don't know if people have given any observation to your intentions or volitions. What's the intention for you to come here today? You know what your intention is? To come and have a good meal? That was the intention of those people, those young people this morning.
Those campers.
The campers came here for have a nice lunch. Well, maybe some of them had an interest to come and study, and the one of them may come back again.
That's
I said, yeah. So but each one of them has a different intention, probably. Some just went along with the group, and maybe some were actually positively interested. And when I was I gave a retreat once in Denver, Colorado, and they want a theme, of course. You see, it was a 2 day longs. I think it was a weekend, non-residential. So I don't know why, but I chose the theme of karma and result, action and result. You see, and so we were trying to encourage them to observe their intentions. But even I found it quite hard too, because sitting in a quiet place, watching your breath, not a lot of intention there. You see, but when you're more active, you observe things. You have sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and thoughts. Then maybe you have some intention with them. You want to follow them. I want to encourage this, this sight. My intention is to prolong it, or to encourage it, or something or other. But when you're sitting in the this was in a church actually, but sitting in this church room, your eyes closed and in a quiet place, not a lot of intentions going on. And the one near the end, one of the leader of the group, he was saying, "That's pretty hard to observe your intention." It wasn't a very exciting retreat. But what the Buddha is very important, because the Buddha defined kamma or karma as intention. It's a very refined, definition. For most people, all they can see is they see the outward expression of your action in your speech and your physical action. But what's hard to know the intention. It's impossible to see it from outside. And then how do you even know it yourself? What's your intention? People come to make an offering, for example. Make a donation. Many different intentions there. Some people make a big, a big show of it. The main intention is that people can look at them and see how generous they are. Maybe, For other people, their heart is very pure. They just want to support something good. It can be exactly the same action, but the intention behind it can be quite different. So unless we understand our intentions, we don't know. It's hard for us to see the intentional actions and its result accordingly. And of course, something like consciousness. Sometime by translating these Pali words into English, they get a bit distorted in their meaning. But in the original Pali, vijnana, consciousness, vijnana, it just means a distinguishing knowledge. It distinguishes between seeing and hearing and smelling, tasting, touching. Be able to distinguish a thought. Now you're thinking. That's consciousness. But unfortunately, in English, consciousness usually implies also the thinking part, discrimination, which is a sankhara in the Buddhist template of looking at reality. But so we have this knowing quality, with us all the time. At least when you wake up in the morning, become conscious, and it persists through the day till you become unconscious at night again. And so it seems to be something permanent. And that's what the main problem is, that people mistake these functions, how we relate to reality, these functions, how we experience, as a part of themselves. It's myself. It's what the Buddha said in grasping, the 5 groups of grasping. It's by grasping these 5 aspects of the human being that we have a sense of a self. If we don't understand that, we don't really understand this principle, we don't see that's the cause of unsatisfactoriness. You're holding on to them, you're trying to affirm them when they are dynamic, changing processes. Maybe some of us, as we get older, we recognize, something like memory. I'm showing my age now, I guess, when I start forgetting the name of things and people. And memory's unreliable, but I used to be able to remember very well. I had a very good memory, you see. So there I was developed a certain sense of a self around that. People would be asking me, "Oh, what about this and what about that? Do you remember that?" One of my relatives, my aunt, my eldest aunt, who's passed away now, she apparently had a photographic memory. Somebody just gave her a telephone number and she'd remember it for the rest of her life. And I wasn't that good, but but I had quite a good memory anyway. But I used to have anyway. But that me is faded away now. That sense of self is, I have to humbly admit, it's impermanent. But if we don't understand this, it's getting more subtle, this what the Buddha is talking about as, the causes of our unsatisfactoriness, of suffering. If we don't understand it, first of all, we aren't able to find out what the causes are behind it, and we aren't able to release it to realize cessation of suffering. We know, intellectually, okay, like something like death is suffering. I guess, we don't know yet, I guess, but we intellectualize that death can be suffering. But what is it? When you begin to investigate, first of all, what is something like death? What's the cause of it? What's cessation? What is death anyway? It's a passing away. I mean, in the Pali scriptures, they sometimes they refer to death as just the breakup of the body. Yeah, the four elements cease, break up. Well, what can be more? Why is that suffering? The body just, like imagine your heart beating away, and it's hard work. Keep your heart beating, then it stops. What a relief. And no more, don't have to eat anymore, don't have to digest, don't have to go to the toilet anymore, you don't feel any more cold. When you look at it that way, well, it's a relief, isn't it? I mean, what's the suffering in that? However, what else is there? What if I have memories of things that I'm still holding on to? I'm still grasping. I haven't finished my book yet, so I can't die. If I do, I got to come back again and finish it. And when it gets down to the subtler levels, there's these 5 groups. Okay, I can probably quite easily let go of my body. It's it's getting older and more rickety all the time, so I can probably let go of that fairly easy. Feeling tones, I don't know about that one. Pleasant feeling, well, as long as I die pleasantly. Memories, okay, forget them, memories, I got too many anyway. And I've already experienced them fading away, so I can learn to let them go anyway. Thinking, yeah, I can let that one go too. But consciousness, I don't know. I mean, this is kind of, consciousness is knowing, this faculty of knowing. So, can I really let go of knowing? I've got to know even what death is, don't I? It's a bit of a hard one to let go of, that one, consciousness. But they say it goes on anyway, so. Gets reborn again, see, so. But I'll have to start all over again, because you lose all your memories and you lose all your thinking faculties, and if you get reborn again, you got to start over again with a clean slate, with just consciousness and not an old rickety body, but a new one which has got colic and, and growing pains. I guess there's still feeling there too, of some kind, So. But you never know what kind of feeling may predominate, what feeling tone may predominate, We would like it to be pleasant, but no guarantee. But if we understand, like these 5 groups of grasping, I would say it's like a template the Buddha gave us. And rather than the Buddha talking about, myself, he very, very rarely talked about self. But he referred more often to the 5 groups. He referred to you could say, the kind of functions of a human being, rather than saying you, yourself. So it's maybe a little bit difficult for people to get their head around, because, especially like the 5 groups of grasping, it's a big long phrase rather than just say me. See, the 5 groups of grasping are feeling unpleasant today, are having unpleasant feeling tone at the moment. It's a bit of a long statement. You just say, oh, I feel not so good. And then we just kind of default to that assumption then of I, of me. The theme of my for this book I'm trying to put together, which is hard work, is I-making. I-making and a cessation of I-making, you see. And of course, one of the key elements in this I-making is the grasping of the 5 groups of grasping. That's how that's how identification begins. I think, I feel, I sense the body, etc. That's how we usually function in the world, relating from that point of view. But when you understand what the Buddha is talking about with these 5 groups, it's not you anymore. You can just leave yourself out of it. The body senses, the feeling feels, the memory works sometimes, the brain thinks, and there's consciousness, there's knowing there. They're just functions. And actually it goes on a lot better without you interfering with it. But we don't understand that, then we keep bringing the self into it. We keep making the I, making the self all the time. Even just to have that phrase, I making, to already, just to have that presented, to me anyway, already points out a very significant truth in Buddhism. The I is made up. How many people know that? Most people in the world, they assume that their I is an absolute reality, to die for. And the Buddhists are saying, it's just something you make up. It's just a sankhara, just constructed, created. And if you don't have the wisdom, you keep creating it, you're living in a fantasy world. You're living in an illusion. You're living in an imaginary world of I-ness, me-ness. But when you understand it's just made up, okay. And if sometime you make it up and it's not so well made, it's not so good, so well made, well made, then okay, that's just the way it is. And it'll change. Whereas people don't understand that, they spend so much time working on their ego. The whole world is they have to put so much effort into the world in order to massage their ego. And it's all a big illusion. Well, the ego is a big illusion. Oops. Of course, it's a lot easier to think about it than actually to do it. So the Buddha gave us the particular practices to follow. One of the meditations he gave as the most direct one. When somebody said to the Buddha, the Buddha said, "Can you give me a short, succinct teaching that I can use?" And the Buddha said, just contemplate the arising and passing away of the 5 groups of grasping. That's all you have to do. Yeah, simple. So you got that? Of course, contemplating it, investigating it from some degree of concentration, some degree of calmness mind, not just thinking about it. Yeah. In order to do that, of course, most people, they have to study it first. What is feeling tone? What is sanya? What is sankharas? What is consciousness? And once you get familiar with it, then you can begin to tune into it. Just observing it sometimes, just bringing mindfulness to it. As I mentioned, the being mindful of these 5 groups of grasping is one of the exercises advised in the development of mindfulness. Just to observe them. Observe your feeling tones, for example. And one little exercise I thought of, there's only 5 of them, and there's 7 days in the week. Just imagine try to each day of the week, just take one of them. Try to just observe the body one day. Yeah? Feeling tone the next day. And sometimes just being aware of them, just turning your awareness to it, being attentive to the body, you can begin to notice how changeable it really is. How there is, this body is tired, and then you you have something to eat, something that gets stronger again, and sometimes you can notice the cause and effect processes there. Sometimes you can observe the changing processes, but you don't know the causes. The body could be the change in weather. It could be what you ate. It could be who knows. But just observing how the body is constantly changing all the time, rather than just holding on to this idea that there is a body, a fixed body. But when you observe it more carefully, you notice it's a physical process going on here, and it's almost like it's a miracle. Actually, it holds together. In fact, you may notice. Well, sometimes you might notice that it doesn't hold together so well. There's always some little hiccup somewhere. Got an ache or a pain here or there, or something or other, but. By just being able to turn your attention to that and being observe these changing processes of the body, already it gives rise to wisdom. We get more wise about the real nature of the body rather than just rely upon our concept about it. It should be like this, it should be like that. We actually observe it as it's happening. As in our tradition, we talk about mindfulness wisdom, satipanya. It's the wisdom that comes from observing directly with mindfulness. And then feeling tones. I think in the Easter retreat, I gave this, I went through these various exercises and of mindfulness, developing mindfulness. And one whole day, I think it was, what whole day of observing feeling tone, was it? Maybe a whole day. And, on one hand, it's a little bit of a language problem because it's just trying to point out in the Buddhist definition, feeling tone, just the very basic tone of the feeling, if you like, the emotion, if you like, pleasant or unpleasant or neutral. I gave one retreat in Switzerland, and there was a woman there who had already got her master's degree in Buddhism or something or other. And I tried to explain about these feelings. I don't know if it was my bad German or something or other, but... and she started arguing with me. The feelings are no, they are emotion. They are emotion, the feelings. I thought, it's just the tone of the feeling, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. The emotion is the sankhara, or state of mind, you see. But once we can put that template on our experience, just noticing when it's pleasant or unpleasant or neutral, you begin to notice, oh my goodness, these changing flux of feelings, and what the cause and the effect processes are too. What causes pleasant feeling and what causes unpleasant feeling tone, and what's the benefit or the result of it. And then perception, the whole theme of perception, of being able to recognize things, and going to being in different countries, different places in the world. I see some very strange things sometimes, and even here in Australia. Sometimes, especially when I walk over to that cliff over there by the cave, and there's no plants there, no plant that I can recognize. Don't have any name for them. You just say eucalyptus, okay? It's 1,000 eucalyptus, but there's no tree that looks like anything I grew up with in Canada. No tree like anything in Thailand. Completely different. Sometimes I think, what planet is this anyway? There's all these prickly kind of grass or something or other. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, this grass that sticks out, and
grass
trees or whatever they are, and these trees with no bark on them, What do they call them?
Engulfers.
Engulfers.
Yeah.
Yeah. A tree with no bark on it. That's not a tree. A naked tree. And then trees with these bushy flowers on them, I think, oh gosh, what a strange place this is. That's not even to talk about the that's only the flora. I'll have to talk about the fauna. Anyways, but I have to give these it's just associations. You see, this tree with the kind of stringy grass on it. I don't even know what it's called. That's my closest memory. But when we have to rely upon these associations to be able to get some direction in life, and get some direction in which ways the right, what things are, whatever they are, and then we think we know them. But it's just a perception, just an image. Is it even right sometime? You talk about scriptures talk about the distortions of perception. They can be, physically distorted. You hear sounds, and what the heck is that? And maybe you have to give it a label. Sometimes when I notice things, when I see certain things, I can just see my mind. It's like putting the search function on Google. What is that? What is that? What is that? Click, 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 click. There are no results for your search. Then what do you do? I don't know what it is. I don't know. Just something from Australia, that's all it is. The lost continent. Then, of course, sankharas, that's a big theme to investigate, because on one hand, the Buddha gave a certain definitions, mainly intention, volition, will, but and then there's let's say there's three of them: intention, contact, and attention. Buddha mentioned, but it also has become a kind of a theme for all kinds of mental activity. Become the kind of a catch-all for all kinds of mental activity. So, you can say greed, aversion, delusion, or sankharas. And being able to observe your thought processes, for example. Just be able to spend some time, maybe a day, for a whole day, just try to observe, what kind of moods come up in your mind, what kind of thoughts come up in your mind. And once you can notice them, it's like bringing attention to them. Then, you could expand that awareness around them, and you can see maybe where they come from. I was mentioned to somebody, when I was doing this fast in Switzerland one time, quite an extreme fast, and I had these really terrible moods coming over me, just really black, despairing moods. I thought, where did that come from? Then I realized it was from the fast. I was taking this lemon juice or something or other, lemon juice fast, and a lot of toxins were being released into the bloodstream, and it was caffeine withdrawal, sugar withdrawal, food withdrawal, and there was just like this really, really dark moods come over me, but they'd pass quite quickly too, And I realized it's just all the toxins coming into the bloodstream from being released in this fasting process. And they created states of mind, very, very negative ones. But if I didn't know that, and I wasn't observing these changing moods, I would have gone to the mental hospital. Can you give me a pill to take away this depression and this feeling of despair? But it's just a passing mood. And sometimes if you can just observe them, we're being the observer of them, we don't buy into them. We don't take them so seriously. We just realize, it's just a thought. Clever thought, stupid thought, depressive thought, confused thought, whatever, just a thought. Rising and passing. You can put your energy into being the observer of it rather than the reactor to it. The believer in it, and then we react to it. You compound it, make it even more of a problem. And of course, consciousness, this to be able to observe the knowing quality of mind. Yeah. You can begin to observe how it changes too. Sometimes the knowing is quite clear, sometimes the knowing is a bit dull, sometimes you're knowing different things. Yeah. You notice a sight, and then you hear a sound. And the sight dies, and the sound arises. Yeah, that's consciousness in the Buddha's definition. You're conscious of the sight, and then it arises and it passes away, and then you're conscious of a sound, it arises and it passes away. But the Buddha gave this as a particular, you can say that kind of the very succinct teaching to apply. If we want to try to experience the cessation of suffering, and the basis of suffering is the 5 groups of grasping. The Buddha gave us this very succinct teaching. Observe it. Observe the 5 groups of grasping and notice how they arise and pass away, rise and pass away. And then when we can do that, we begin to recognize there's nothing we can really grasp, nothing we can hold on to. They're just processes, completely, just empty processes rolling on. And then we don't default to that I-making process, grasping onto these functions, human functions. We don't grasp them. We can still use them. We still live with them, but we don't hold on to them. We just can flow with them, as it were, because they are dynamic processes, always changing, so we can begin to flow more easily with them. To live in more harmony with the body. The body's changing, so rather than resist it, especially when as the aging process takes its toll, we become grumpy old men. No, the body shouldn't be like this. No, I should have more energy. I should be able to... Ouch. The reality is ouch, but the mind says, no, it shouldn't be like this. I still should have the energy of 21. Well... It will really make you grumpy and disappointed and depressed. But if you can just recognize, that's the way the body is. Energy is running down. There's other qualities. Now as I recognize getting older, less restlessness. In fact, it's the opposite. More sleepiness. Before, when I was younger, one of the problems meditation was restlessness. Hard to sit there and watch the breath, and I could think about it. Could be doing so many other things besides sitting here watching the breath. And now that the energy is not there so much, it's a lot more peaceful sometimes. So peaceful, I just fall asleep. So I got to be more active now. I got to make an effort to be active, otherwise I could just vegetate there in my chair. Can't sit cross-legged so much anymore because it's so painful, But if I sit in the chair, then I can sit there for a long time. Start growing roots. But the Buddha gave us this particular direction. He had the compassion for us and pointed out to us there is a possibility to realize the cessation of unsatisfactoriness. And nowadays people have more interest in meditation in general, like mindfulness practice, and mostly many of them it is just to reduce a bit of their suffering, which is that's part of the process. People know a little bit about their own mind. They don't get fooled by it so much anymore. They don't get so worried and so frustrated and so depressed, maybe. We can observe the nature of their thoughts. But how many of them are really aspiring to the cessation of unsatisfactoriness, of old age, sickness, and death? Or is it just reducing some of their suffering? But the Buddha gave us this particular, I can say, quite a noble aspiration, the cessation of unsatisfactoriness of all kinds, possibility to realize the deathless state, deathlessness, to not even die anymore. Of course, there's a different element to it. We usually think of something like death in our on our usual conceptual framework. Yeah, the body's still going to pass away. Yeah, the body will still break up. But you don't have to die. If you aren't making yourself, aren't I-making around this body, for example, when the body passes away, there's nobody there to die. Huh? Nobody there to break up. Just the body breaks up. Yeah? And then you can sit back and say, oh, thank you, give me a break. Break up without me. So give me a break. But this requires, quite a bit of, you could say, meditation practice, because while we can observe, maybe you can say, the kind of relative levels of suffering or unsatisfactoriness, to observe the more subtle levels, where we're really holding on. Can you really let go of the body? Maybe I'll close with a story, because there was this Thai woman who came to the monastery in England, and first time she was actually a Muslim, but she got cancer when she was in England, and had chemotherapy, and had lost her hair through chemotherapy. And then her friends used to joke with her and say, "You look like a nun. You look like a nun." And she had to recover, so they said, "Why don't you go to the monastery? You already got a shaven head." So she decided to go to come to Chithurst Monastery and stay there as a nun. And then she really quite enjoyed it. But her hair grew back again, so she had to leave. But then her cancer came back again, and she just thought, "Oh no, I don't want to go through this chemotherapy again. No, I've had enough of that." So she went to the monastery, become a nun, and shaved her head, and passed away in the monastery as a nun. And when she was, it came very quickly. She had, I think it was liver cancer, which came very, very quickly. So she was really a very, very evolved person. I was on a retreat. She came on a 10-day retreat with Ajahn Sumedho, and I was with him there. And so I listened to the interviews he gave. And she was describing these very, 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 very refined states of mind she was experiencing. She's just a natural meditator, She wasn't even a Buddhist. She didn't grow up as a Buddhist, but she had a very, natural aptitude for meditation. She could observe very, very refined states of mind and sensations in the body, and it's quite amazing. She learned very, very quickly. Maybe because she recognized she's dying. I don't know. Probably if you recognize you're dying, people's spiritual practice is speeded up because you haven't got much time left. But she came to the monastery and spent her last days there. Passed away in the monastery, and then she used to when she was getting near the end, she gave the possibility for the monks and the nuns to come and sit with her, to have the last final vigil with her while she's dying. So I think it was one night, maybe it was even a full moon night, I don't know, but I went with some other monks and the nuns to sit with her. She wanted to have people with her when she died. So I was sitting there with her, and she was lying. She was just propped up on some cushions. She could hardly breathe. And she was breathing there and very weird, very, very weak. And then, she kind of went quiet, and the breathing stopped. And we all thought, she's gone. And a few seconds later, she started breathing again, and then she Gradually she began breathing more rapidly, and she opened her eyes. "Oh, sorry, not yet," she said. And of course, the first thing she said, "Oh, pass around the sweets," Then she described her experience. She was saying that she began to feel that the four elements, the four basic elements in the body, earth, fire, water, air, were starting to separate, starting to break up. So she was observing these, the earth going to the earth, and the water to the water, and the air to the air, and the fire to the air, and the fire to the fire, and then they began to break up, and then they kind of stopped, came back together again. And then she opened her eyes, the consciousness came back again. But she could observe this process of the body breaking up. I just read that in the Buddhist scriptures, you see, but she could describe this four elements separating. And I guess what happens is if they go far enough, they don't go back together again, and then you're dead. The body literally breaks. It's a literally break up, but the elements separate because it's consciousness which holds them together, you see, which makes the life. And these elements are separated back to their, there's no more life left in the body, in other words. It's separated into the elements, elemental elements then. But she had enough, mindfulness or clarity of mind to observe this process, And then I wasn't there when she passed away, but I guess, the elements, same thing, the elements separated, but they didn't come back together again. So she didn't open her eyes, and so that was, and very, very peaceful. And it was very, very peaceful sitting in the room with her. There was and she said it's so pleasant being with monks and nuns to die, she said. When her friends come and see her, they're crying and they're carrying on. But you can just sit there and you know the dying process and be just very peaceful with me and meditate and through this transition, you see. But her friends they couldn't accept her dying, you see, so they're very, very upset. But if I can die like she does, then I'll be happy. So basically, if we understand the nature of these five groups, we just recognize them as they're just impersonal processes. Yeah. So even though the body breaks up, you can say basically there's nobody there in the body. So there is the dying process, but there's nobody who dies. You can say that's the deathless. There is no person who dies. So if we can really develop meditation to that level, there's a possibility, that we're going to really reach the cessation of unsatisfactoriness, the cessation of death, even to that level. But it usually requires quite a bit of practice rather than just thinking about it. It'd be a nice idea, yes, the body to just fade away and me not to feel any pain, but but to be able to do it requires usually some practice, and that's what we're here for, right? Yeah. So hopefully you'll be able to, understand this principle and put it into our everyday life practice, and maybe we realize for ourselves what it really is the cessation of suffering. So I leave that for your contemplation this evening.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.
So, late night tonight? Or?
No, it's tomorrow. Right? Tomorrow's full moon.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. Tonight is...
Nobody will be here tomorrow. Huh?
Chai Pond?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah.
Early morning tomorrow, though. 4 to 6.
4 to 6, yeah. So,
okay, finish up there.
Arahato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipanno Bhagavato Sāvaka Sangho Sanghang Namami.
$4 in here.
Yeah.